Hey folks, welcome to week 6. We've got a couple of things going on this week that a little out of the norm maybe for some of the history classes you might have been exposed to in the past. We're looking at art and literature this week. The readings are really interesting in my opinion to see how Emerson kind of became a rock star of his time through public lectures. I guess the best comparison might have been really long form TikToks, is what public lectures were, but they were definitely a big deal when you had a renowned speaker, an intellectual that would come to your town. Folks would buy the tickets, out in advance, crash their version of Ticketmaster and all that kind of good stuff. So that was one of the ways that ideas were really spread beyond books and papers and pamphlets and that type of thing. To be able to interact with that intelligentsia of the early nation was huge. Kind of a different platform than we're used to, but Emerson is one of those leading voices from the time. Think you might be interested in that. Sims has this thing that we're going to read this week called Myths of Southern Manhood, the Soul of a Man, that is going to, I think, really help clarify in a lot of people's minds how what we call today the Old South was looked at, and the white males of that era, what their responsibilities were towards society as seen by one of their own. It's really interesting. And then we'll get into social criticism again through the glass eye darkly, and that is another piece that you may want to read. Put it aside, read early, put it aside, come back to it later in the week. Some real good thought stuff in there. And finally, as we start to talk about the Hudson River School and the article Wilderness and Its Waters, we move from the written word to painted art, and that school of artists that were emerging in early America as a nation, and how they really set up not just artwork for the nation going forward for a very long period of time, but how that art played on society. So, all right, that's kind of a background for it. Let's talk about the homework for just a minute. The mini bibliographies are over. If you were not assigned one, go back and look in the discussion post in weeks 2 through 5. Double check that. If you really didn't get assigned one, let me know. That's worth a few points towards the end of the course. Then come back to me and I'll give you the topic to work on. What everybody has got this week, lottie-dottie everybody, is an annotated bibliography. And I'm going to throw an example into the announcement, so look for that. But what you need to look at in your bibliography is a really good annotated bibliography of, probably at this point, you've got to have at least 12 secondary sources. Books and articles, mix them up. It doesn't have to be half and half. However, it's leaning towards your topic is the way to go with that. And remember, secondary sources, not primary sources. In a historiographical essay, we are looking at what historians have said about the event, so don't get off into that research material. No matter how exciting it might be for you, stick with what historians have said and try to use the lenses that you identified in your topic proposal. So, the things you're looking for, or I'm going to look for in your bibliography, are spelled out pretty clearly. You need to talk about who the author was, what their credentials are. Need to talk about the argument and the content. Is this related, and is it an academically valid source for your historiographical work? And that's really important, right? We've talked about that a couple of times this term. Talk about the thesis statement from the material. Does that, is there a clear thesis statement there that you can express to show how this material ties back to your own thesis and how it ties back to the work you're doing. Take a look at the evidence that is used in the content. What is that evidence? How can you use it to support your own? That comes under the application, right? So tell me, I'm using this source. Here's why it's academically valid. Here's who the author is. This is what their thesis was. This is a brief description of the source material, and then this is how I'm going to apply it in my own work. Take about 2, maybe 3 paragraphs per source. Again, there's an example attached to the announcement. So if you got any questions, as always, reach out to me and we will either exchange emails or set something up to work through it. Thanks for your time. Hope you enjoy the materials this week.